Imagine being alone on an island. No people, no help, only your courage and your words. That's how Robinson Crusoe survived. And today we'll use his story to improve your English pronunciation and confidence. Robinson Crusoe, Chapter 1, The Dream to Sail. Robinson Crusoe was not born a hero. He was born in the city of York, England, in the year 1632, an ordinary boy with extraordinary dreams. His father wanted him to become a lawyer, to live a quiet and safe life. But inside young Robinson, there was a fire, the fire of adventure, the call of the sea. From the window of his small house, he often watched ships sailing far away. The sound of waves and the sight of white sails made his heart race. He didn't dream of comfort. He dreamed of discovery. He didn't want a desk. He wanted the deck of a ship. One evening, while sitting with his father, Crusoe heard words that tried to chain his dreams. "My son," said his father gently, "those who go to the sea chase danger, not fortune. A wise man stays on land." But Robinson's heart refused to listen. "Father," he replied softly, "I want to see the world." His father's eyes filled with worry, his mother's with tears. Yet Crusoe's decision was made. He believed the ocean was calling him, and no voice could silence it. Days passed. The dream grew stronger. Finally, one morning, without a long goodbye, Robinson Crusoe left home. He stepped onto his first ship, nervous but thrilled, scared but alive. The salty wind touched his face as if welcoming him into a new life. The sea was not kind at first. The waves were wild, and the wind screamed through the sails. For the first time, Crusoe felt the true power of nature. The ship rocked violently, and fear struck every man aboard. Many prayed, many cried, and Crusoe, he realized something deep. Dreams are easy when they're only dreams. They become hard when the storm begins. The ship barely survived the storm. When they finally reached land, Crusoe's heart trembled. Maybe his father was right. Maybe the sea was not for him. But then another voice whispered inside him, "Do not stop now. Every storm teaches you how to sail." Crusoe decided to try again. He joined another voyage, this time to Africa. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with danger, luck, and lessons he could never learn on land. As the ship sailed south, the ocean looked calm, and the skies were clear. The crew laughed, the captain sang, and Crusoe felt alive again. But the sea, like life, can change in a moment. Pirates appeared, fierce, fast, and fearless. Their black flags waved like shadows of death. Crusoe's ship tried to escape, but the pirates were too strong. Within hours, he was captured. He was taken as a prisoner to a strange land. For the next 2 years, Robinson Crusoe lived as a slave in the port of Salé in North Africa. His dreams of freedom seemed to fade, but not his courage. Every day, while serving his master, he looked at the endless sea and whispered, "One day, I will be freed again." That day came when his master sent him fishing with a small boat and 2 servants. Crusoe saw his chance. He pushed the servant overboard, took control of the boat, and rowed with all his strength. The waves were high, but his will was higher. He escaped. For days, he drifted along the African coast, hungry, thirsty, and sunburned. He caught fish with his bare hands and drank rainwater from the spring. His body was weak, but his spirit was unbroken. Finally, a Portuguese ship spotted him and rescued him. Crusoe thanked God for saving his life and promised to start again. But he didn't know his greatest adventure was still waiting, far from any map, on a lonely island that would change his destiny forever. Chapter 2. The journey begins. From escape to new horizons. After his daring escape from slavery, Robinson Crusoe stood once again on the deck of a ship, free but changed. The sea breeze that once felt like an invitation now whispered lessons of survival. He was no longer the boy who dreamed of adventure. He was a man who had seen the cost of freedom. The Portuguese captain who rescued him treated Crusoe with kindness. He gave him food, clothes, and a chance to start over. They sailed toward Brazil, a land of green mountains and golden opportunities. Crusoe felt hope again, but deep down he knew his story had only begun. When the ship reached Brazil, Crusoe was fascinated by the beauty of the new world. The air was warm, the forests alive, and the people friendly. He began to work hard and smart, helping the captain and learning about trade. Within a few years, he bought a small piece of land and started a plantation. For the first time in his life, Robinson Crusoe was safe, successful, and respected. He could have stayed there forever, living peacefully, growing crops, and earning money. But adventure still lived in his blood. The sea still called his name. One day, a group of merchants approached him with a plan. "Crusoe," they said, "we are planning a voyage to Africa to buy slaves for our plantations. Join us. You know the way, and your experience will help us." Crusoe hesitated for a moment. Deep inside, a quiet voice reminded him of his father's warning. Those who go to the sea chase danger, not fortune. But his restless heart pushed him forward again. He agreed to join the voyage. It was a bright morning when they set sail from Brazil. The sky was blue, the sea calm, and the wind gentle. The men were in high spirits, singing and laughing, dreaming of riches. Crusoe looked at the horizon and whispered to himself, "This time I'll return safely." But destiny had other plans. After several weeks at sea, dark clouds began to gather. The wind changed its tone, soft at first, then sharp and wild. Waves started rising like mountains. The captain shouted orders. The crew pulled ropes, but nature was furious. Thunder roared like a beast, and lightning tore the sky apart. The storm hit with full power. The ship shook, tilted, and cracked under the force of the waves. Water poured in through the sides. Men screamed, praying for mercy. Crusoe tried to hold the mast, his heart racing faster than the storm itself. He shouted, "God, save us!" Then came a wave so massive, it swallowed the ship whole. Everything went dark. When Crusoe opened his eyes, he was floating alone in the water. The ship was gone. His friends were gone. The ocean stretched endlessly around him. He held onto a broken piece of wood, coughing and gasping for breath. He had no idea where he was, or if he'd ever see land again. Hours turned into a blur of fear and exhaustion. Crusoe drifted helplessly, praying for one glimpse of hope. Then, through the mist, he saw something. A line of sand, palm trees, and waves crashing gently on a distant shore. Land. He gathered his last strength, kicked his legs, and swam. The current fought him, but he didn't give up. His hands touched sand at last. Crawling onto the beach, he collapsed. Half dead, but alive. When he woke up, the sun was shining bright. The sea was calm again, as if nothing had happened. He looked around, no people, no ships, no voices, just trees, rocks, and silence. Robinson Crusoe stood up slowly, his clothes torn, his heart pounding. He realized the truth. I am alive, but I am alone. He looked at the endless ocean and the empty beach. Not a single sign of life, only his own footprints on the wet sand. At that moment, he felt two things, deep fear and strange gratitude. Fear because he had no idea how to survive. Gratitude because among all his shipmates, he alone had lived. He raised his hands to the sky and whispered, "God, you saved me for a reason. Show me what to do next." He didn't know that this very island, silent and lonely, would become his home and his greatest teacher. As the sun set that evening, Robinson Crusoe built a small shelter from broken branches and leaves. The sound of the waves was both comforting and terrifying. He was not sure what tomorrow would bring, hunger, hope, or death. But he knew one thing for sure. He would not give up. He lay under the stars and closed his eyes, whispering to himself, "I have lost everything, but I still have life. And as long as I live, I will fight to survive." That night, the ocean kept its rhythm, and the lonely island waited for its new master, a man who had lost the world but would soon discover himself. Chapter 3, The Storm and the Shipwreck. The beginning of a new life. The next morning, Robinson Crusoe woke up to a strange silence. No voices, no ship, no sign of another human. Only the endless sound of the waves and the wind through the trees. The ocean that had once promised him freedom now looked like a giant wall, keeping him trapped forever. Crusoe stood on the beach staring at the wide horizon. His clothes were wet and torn, his body weak, but his mind began to think. "I'm alive," he whispered, "and if I'm alive, I must fight to live." He walked along the coast, hoping to find food or someone alive. But the sand stretched endlessly, and there was no one. In the distance, he saw pieces of the broken ship still floating on the waves. The ship that had brought him to this fate was now his only hope for survival. When the tide went down, Crusoe swam toward the wreck. The water was cold, the current strong, but he reached the ship and climbed aboard. Inside, everything was broken, yet he found treasures more valuable than gold. Tools, nails, ropes, guns, powder, clothes, and food. He loaded them carefully into a small raft made from wooden planks. The sea pushed against him, but he managed to bring the raft to shore. That night, Crusoe sat beside his little pile of supplies and stared at the stars. The island was silent, wild, and full of secrets. This is my world now, he thought. If I must live here, I'll make it my home. The next few days were filled with fear and hard work. Crusoe explored the island carefully. It was big, full of hills, forests, and rivers. He saw goats running freely, colorful birds flying above, and fruits growing on trees. It was beautiful, but it was also dangerous. He didn't know if wild animals lived there or if someone else was hiding in the woods. To protect himself, Crusoe built a shelter on a hill near the beach. He used branches, ropes, and pieces from the ship. Around it, he made a fence with sharp stakes so no animal could come near. He called it his castle. Inside, he stored food, weapons, and all the things he saved from the ship. Every morning, he worked hard, cutting wood, drying food, and marking days on a piece of wood. I must not forget time, he said to himself. If I count my days, I'll remember I'm still human. But even as he worked, loneliness crept into his heart. The silence of the island became heavier every day. Sometimes he spoke out loud just to hear his own voice. Sometimes he sat on the shore for hours, watching the sea, hoping for a ship to appear. None came. At night, he prayed, God, give me strength. Don't let me lose hope. And somehow he felt peace after each prayer. One day, while walking through the forest, Crusoe discovered a small cave. It was cool and dry, a perfect place to hide during storms. He made it his second home, where he kept food safe from the sun and rain. Slowly, he began to understand the rhythm of the island. When it rained, when fruits grew, when the tide rose and fell. Months passed, his beard grew long, his clothes turned ragged, but his spirit became stronger. He made pots out of clay, learned to milk goats, and grew barley from the seeds he found. For the first time, he realized how little a man truly needs to live. One evening, as he watched the sunset, Crusoe smiled. The world took everything from me, he said softly, but gave me a new life in return. He had food, shelter, water, and faith. He had no one to talk to, but he had found something even more powerful, himself. Still, one question stayed in his heart. Am I the only man on this island? He didn't know that soon he would find an answer that would change everything. Chapter 4, Alone on the Island, Survival, Fear, and Discovery. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Robinson Crusoe had learned to live with the rhythm of the island. Every morning he woke before sunrise, listening to the waves crash against the shore. Every evening he counted his blessings, food, water, shelter, and the courage to keep going. The island was beautiful, but it was also unforgiving. Wild goats roamed the hills, snakes slithered through the underbrush, and heavy storms struck without warning. Crusoe quickly realized that survival required not just courage, but careful planning. He started by strengthening his shelter, building it higher, sturdier, and safer. He dug a well to have fresh water close by and created a storage space for the food he gathered. Hunting became a part of his daily life. With a handmade spear and a small trap, he caught birds and goats. He learned to fish with patience, throwing lines into the sea and waiting for hours. Each meal was a victory, a reminder that he could survive, even in complete isolation. Crusoe also began to farm. He planted barley and vegetables from seeds he had salvaged from the ship. Every sprout was a triumph, every harvest a reward. As the months passed, he built simple furniture, made clay pots, and even learned to tan animal hides for clothing. Each new skill filled him with pride, and slowly, fear began to fade. But isolation brought a different kind of challenge. Loneliness, the silence of the island, weighed on him. He spoke to himself, naming objects, creating imaginary companions, and reading aloud the words he remembered from the ship. It was strange, but it kept his mind sharp. One morning, while exploring the beach after a storm, Crusoe saw something that froze him in place. Footprints in the sand. Not animal tracks, human footprints. His heart pounded. Could he finally find another person? Or was it danger waiting to strike? He followed the footprints carefully, hiding behind rocks and observing from a distance. Days passed, and he saw more signs. Broken branches, traces of fire, and discarded food. Crusoe realized he was not alone on the island. Fear and curiosity battled inside him. Who were these people? Were they friend or foe? He decided to stay hidden for a while, observing them from a distance, learning their habits, and understanding their language. He named them in his mind, strangers of the island, a mystery he had to solve. Despite the fear, Crusoe did not let it stop him from building his life. He created stronger tools from stone and wood, built a fence around his shelter to keep wild animals away, and dug more wells to store water. Every small achievement reminded him that he could control his destiny, even in a place so wild and lonely. Time passed differently on the island. Days felt long, but months and years slipped quietly by. Crusoe began to see the island not as a prison, but as a teacher. It taught him patience, resourcefulness, and the importance of hope. He learned that survival was not just about strength, but about creativity, observation, and faith. One evening after a long day of work, Crusoe sat on a cliff overlooking the ocean. The sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, and the waves reflected the colors like molten gold. He thought of his family, his home in England, and the life he had lost. Tears filled his eyes, but they were not just tears of sorrow. They were tears of understanding, acceptance, and gratitude. He whispered to the empty sky, "I am alone, but I am alive. I am afraid, but I am learning, and I will not give up." At that moment, Robinson Crusoe felt a quiet strength settle into his soul. He had faced storms, shipwrecks, hunger, and fear. He had survived when everything seemed impossible. And now, even as unknown humans walked somewhere on this island, he felt ready to meet whatever came next. Chapter 5. The Man Named Friday. Friendship and Hope. For many years, Robinson Crusoe lived alone on the island. He had built shelter, grown food, hunted animals, and survived storms, but deep inside, a quiet loneliness never left him. The island was his home, yet it lacked the warmth of friendship, conversation, and trust. One day, while walking along the cliffs, Crusoe noticed smoke rising in the distance. His heart raced. Could there be another human on the island? Was it friend or foe? He approached carefully, hiding behind the trees. What he saw made him both fearful and hopeful. A group of strangers, armed and dangerous, had landed on the shore. They were attacking other people, prisoners, slaves, or travelers like he once was. Crusoe knew he had to act, but not recklessly. He observed quietly, learning their movements and habits. He realized that some of the strangers were in danger themselves, trapped by stronger enemies. Among them, he noticed one man, different from the rest, young and clever, yet frightened. One night, Crusoe took a brave step. He approached the young man quietly and spoke in a calm voice. "Do not be afraid. I will help you." The man froze, fear in his eyes, but there was something in Crusoe's tone that made him trust this stranger. Over time, Crusoe taught him how to survive on the island, sharing food, building shelter, and showing him tools. They communicated through gestures at first, then slowly learned each other's language. Crusoe named him Friday, after the day he first met him. Friday became more than a companion. He became family, a friend who shared work, hope, and laughter. Together, they hunted, fished, and explored the island. With Friday's help, Crusoe could travel farther, climb higher, and plan for the future with confidence. But their friendship was not just about survival. It was about trust, respect, and understanding. Crusoe taught Friday English while learning Friday's stories and customs. Each day, Crusoe realized that humans are stronger together, that life is not meant to be faced alone. One morning, while building a new shelter near a freshwater stream, Crusoe spoke to Friday. "Life has given us a second chance. Alone, we survived. Together, we will thrive." Friday nodded, smiling. The island no longer seemed lonely or threatening. It was a home filled with purpose, learning, and laughter. Crusoe's heart, once heavy with solitude, now beat with hope and determination. Their days followed a rhythm. They gathered food, repaired shelters, and explored unknown parts of the island. Sometimes they encountered dangers, wild animals, storms, or the remnants of other ships, but they faced each challenge together. Crusoe taught Friday how to use tools and weapons, while Friday taught Crusoe about the forest, the birds, and hidden resources. Months passed, and the bond between them deepened. Crusoe learned patience, humility, and the joy of teaching. Friday learned courage, survival skills, and the value of companionship. They laughed at small mistakes, celebrated small victories, and shared quiet moments under the stars, looking at the endless ocean. Crusoe also realized the importance of gratitude. He had survived alone, but now he had someone to share knowledge, hope, and dreams with. Friday reminded him every day that friendship could light the darkest moments and turn fear into strength. One evening, while sitting on a hill overlooking the sea, Crusoe spoke softly. "We have survived storms, hunger, and loneliness, but together we have discovered life itself, full of courage, hope, and joy." Friday smiled, holding a small fish they had caught. They ate together, laughed together, and for the first time, Crusoe felt a complete sense of peace. The island, once a place of solitude and fear, had transformed into a sanctuary of learning, friendship, and hope. In those moments, Crusoe understood an essential truth. Life is not about what we lose, but about what we build, who we trust, and the bonds we create. The island had given him trials, but it had also given him Friday, a reminder that even in the most desolate places, hope and friendship can flourish. And for the first time in many years, Crusoe truly believed that the future, though uncertain, was bright. Chapter 6. The Return Home, Rescue and Reflection. Years had passed since Robinson Crusoe first stepped onto the island. He had survived storms, hunger, fear, and loneliness. He had built a home, learned new skills, and most importantly, discovered the strength within himself. But as he stood on the beach one quiet morning, he could feel something stirring in his heart, a desire to see the world beyond the horizon once again. One day, while scanning the distant ocean with his makeshift telescope, Crusoe saw a ship approaching. His heart leapt with hope. It was not just any ship. It was a vessel from England, filled with men who could finally take him home. He waved, shouted, and lit a fire. The crew noticed him and carefully navigated the ship to the shore. Crusoe could hardly believe his eyes. Rescue had finally come. As he boarded the ship with Friday by his side, Crusoe looked back at the island that had been his prison and his teacher. He had lived alone for nearly 28 years. The island had given him fear, solitude, and trials, but it had also given him courage, resourcefulness, and friendship. He realized that survival was not just about physical strength, but about patience, hope, and faith. The voyage home was long, but Crusoe felt no fear. The sea that had once threatened his life now carried him safely back to the world he had left behind. He spent hours reflecting on his journey and the storms, the shipwreck, the lonely nights, the discoveries, and the companionship of Friday. Every challenge had shaped him into a man wiser and stronger than he had ever imagined. When Crusoe finally set foot on English soil, he was a changed man. He was no longer the young dreamer who had left York seeking adventure. He was a survivor, a thinker, and a man who understood the value of life, freedom, and human connection. He returned not just with stories of survival, but with lessons that could inspire generations. Crusoe reunited with family, though much had changed. Friends were gone, streets had grown unfamiliar, and the world had moved on. Yet within him, he carried the memory of the island, its solitude, its challenges, and its quiet wisdom. He often shared his experiences, teaching others that even in isolation, a person could grow stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Friday, now his trusted companion, stayed by Crusoe's side. Together, they reflected on their adventures, the lessons learned, and the bonds that had formed on that lonely island. Crusoe realized that survival was important, but friendship and trust were what gave life meaning. The hardships of the island had not broken him. They had prepared him to live fully, with gratitude and purpose. One quiet evening, as the sun set over the familiar hills of England, Crusoe looked at the horizon and whispered, "I have traveled far, lost much, and endured more than I could have imagined. Yet I am here, alone, stronger and grateful. Life has tested me, but it has also given me wisdom, and that wisdom is the greatest treasure of all." Robinson Crusoe's story became legendary, not only for the adventures and dangers he faced, but for the courage, hope, and resilience he embodied. He had learned that life is unpredictable and often harsh, but with faith, intelligence, and the willingness to adapt, one could overcome even the most insurmountable obstacles. Crusoe's journey reminds us that challenges are not meant to defeat us, but to teach us. His island was more than a place of isolation. It was a crucible of growth, a test of character, and a stage where courage and friendship revealed their true power. And so Robinson Crusoe returned home, not as a boy chasing adventure, but as a man who had discovered the true meaning of life, resilience, and hope. His story continues to inspire, showing us that no matter how lonely or impossible the journey may seem, courage, faith, and friendship can light the darkest path. Final words. Imagine being alone on an island. No people, no help, only your courage and your words. That's exactly what Robinson Crusoe faced. Yet through storms, hunger, fear, and total isolation, he survived. He built a life from nothing, discovered his strength, and found friendship with Friday. His story teaches us an important lesson. No matter how difficult life becomes, courage, patience, and faith can help us overcome any challenge. Just like Crusoe, we all face moments when the world seems silent, lonely, or impossible. But it's in those moments that our true character shines. We learn, we grow, and we discover inner strengths we never knew existed. Crusoe's journey reminds us that survival is not just about getting through tough times. It's about learning, adapting, and finding hope even when everything seems lost. If you want to improve your English, build confidence, and discover the power of storytelling, there's no better way than exploring stories like Robinson Crusoe. Repeat words aloud, practice pronunciation, and imagine yourself in the story. This transforms learning into an adventure, just like his life on the island. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this journey through Robinson Crusoe's life, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Share your thoughts in the comments. Maybe even tell us which part of Crusoe's story inspired you the most. Stay motivated, keep learning, and remember, every challenge is an opportunity to grow. Join us on Impressive Learning English for more inspiring stories, powerful lessons, and practical tips to improve your English and confidence every day.